I'd like to say a really big welcome to everybody. Thank you for coming to today's second session about the Rekenreks and thinking mathematically, or session 4 of our focus on fluency series. If you have a Rekenrek, please grab it, whether it's your 20 or your 100, both will do. And if you haven't, you can use the virtual Rekenrek, which is in the chat. And I've just had a message, I haven't got the link in the chat. Could we put it in the link? Could we put the link in again? I think sometimes if you join afterwards, it doesn't let you go back. Thank you, Emma. And Emma, please, could you share your screen?
Yes. Could you enable?
And we'll get ourselves started.
Thank you. Just waiting for...
Any questions along the way, please do write into the chat and we'll respond to them. We're going to be talking you through a lot of different lessons today, and we would really welcome your contributions and your thoughts and get the dialogue going through the chat.
Jenny, would you enable screen sharing, please?
Certainly. Sorry about that. Should be fine now, Emma.
Thank you. Let's just get that up and try that. Thank you. Okay.
Lovely. Can you click on to slide 3, please, for me?
Yeah.
Thank you. So, the Rekenrek. Why were we attracted to it? Well, for us, it really helps meet the needs of one of our 5 big ideas of mastery, which is this idea of developing fluency. For children, the Rekenrek has sort of 2 functions, really. It really helps children understand the composition of number because we're finding parts and wholes all the time with it, and it shows the structure. So for that aspect, it's brilliant. But also, there are so many different ways of finding a number as well. So it encourages that flexibility of thinking that is really important with fluency. So it really does hit that fluency note. And if you are thinking of having a discrete fluency session, a daily discrete fluency session, Rekenreks they can certainly play a part in that. Also, Emma, could you just click, please? Thank you. Also, they do hit this idea of variation as well. And as we go through the lessons today, we hope you'll be able to see how variation has been built into the sequences of learning that we're showing you. There's very small changes, and the design of the questions is such that the variation is built in. So whilst we're going to ask you to make different numbers, but we really want you to try and notice the choice of the numbers and why they've been chosen, because as you and the children are doing this, not only will you be practicing the composition of number and learning to calculate, but you'll also be encouraged to notice pattern and notice structure along the way. So it really is a fantastic tool for both fluency and variation. Next slide, please. The Rekenrek, again, as it kind of hits on a lot of cylinders for us. It helps us to use it across Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 when we're referring to the calculation guidance from the NCTM. It also helps us work through the grid, which I'm going to show you in a minute, which Claire Christie talked about, the number facts. And we're also going to be drawing upon Jeff Rickham's book today from the Maths Learning Centre, and everything that we're about to show you beyond the introduction is taken from his booklet. And we have to say a really big thank you to the Maths Learning Centre for allowing us to put this into PowerPoint and to share it with Sussex and wider. It's a great piece of mathematics, and I think you're going to learn a lot from it. And it's great that it's been done for us and we're sharing it with you. Could you click on, please? Thank you. So today we're going to look at a rationale for using the Rekenrek, which we just started to talk about. We're going to signpost you to some places where you can find more information about Rekenreks and how to develop teaching around them. And we're going to walk you through a suggested teaching sequence using the Maths Learning Centre's guidance. Thank you. So first things first, we're going to be talking about ready position, and we like to say white to the right. So, like so. Oh no, I've got the wrong way around. Is that the right way around for you? I'm just
That's
looking
red.
at
If you go
Got your red.
right, yeah, other way.
I'm
White,
being silly now.
flick it to your white. That's it.
Right.
We have practiced this.
That's right,
It's
'cause
really
we-
weird because it's mirrored. It's mirrored. So it's white to the right. So you're looking at me. There we go. There you go. You learn from my mistake. So it's white to the right is really important. And also we're going to be asking you to do it in one push, generally one push. So if I ask you to move 2 in one push, there we go, 2 in one push. So white to the right, starting position, and moving in one push. Thank you. So in our previous sessions, we have started to look at the facts that children need to learn by the end of year 2. And we're hoping that this is kind of refreshing some of your thinking about that. Please, can you click on? And Claire Christie, in her article that she had in the NCTM newsletter, and now also on her website, when she was working with the NCTM, created this brilliant diagram which shows all of the addition facts broken down into a really logical, straightforward way, drawing attention to the particular strategies and patterns. And these are the year 1 and year 2 facts that the children need to know. And they are divided nicely into subsets, including 1s to 10, adding to 10, doubles. And these are what lots of schools are now working from, having a really systematic approach to getting them known. And once they're known, revisiting them year on year so that they don't just become lost learning. And the evidence says that if they're not learnt by the end of year 2, they're not actually formally revisited for the rest of their school career. So it's really important that Key Stage 1 teachers are shown this so they can see and that they're aware, and we have a systematic approach to addressing them. Next slide, please. Another key point that we want to talk about is, and where the Rekenrek is going to come in and help us, is that counting on approaches are less efficient, and they are associated, according to the research, with lower attainment in maths as well. Higher attainers tend to use known facts or derived fact strategies, and lower attainers are much more likely to use counting-based approaches to solve addition and subtraction facts. That's the research. So again, it looks like an abacus to an extent, and abacuses have previously been used as a kind of crutch or to help with counting, but it's not an abacus. It's going to be used to model structure, see patterns, and unpick the composition of numbers so that children have that visual memory of that. So we want you to pop some answers in the chat here for us. Does your school currently have a systematic approach to teaching fluency? Does it have a systematic approach to teaching fluency? Consider what happens in your class, in your year group, and across the school. Where are you on that continuum? And if you do have one, how did you agree that teaching sequence? That's a really key question. Liza's saying, yes, they do in Key Stage 1. And so if you haven't, it'd be really useful for us to know how you agreed the teaching sequence, because we're all learning from each other here.
There's lots of guidance, isn't there, in the NCTM Register of Progressive Materials and the PD spines. I've got someone else saying it's in their action plan focus for 2021-22, which is fabulous to see.
We were just talking about, actually, with Dan School about how we would set it out in a staff meeting where everyone looks in the national curriculum at their particular year group, pulls out the objectives, thinks about the objectives that come from the year before that don't seem to be known, and really try and build that as a systematic approach, you know, and making sure all staff are involved as stakeholders in that.
Some feedback there that people are using Number Sense, which is Claire Christie's website, and there's lots of free materials on there and free resources you can look at if you're interested to see how that might support you in your school. Lots of people saying that. Excellent.
And when we look through the sequence today, is there anything coming through? Because otherwise we can click on to the next slide.
Yeah.
Lovely. because this is a suggested progression of additive facts, again, taken from the same article written by Claire Christie, but she puts them in this order. And again, lots of schools choose to follow this or use this as a guide for creating their own order and their own approach. And you'll see that you can't ever really follow any one thing wholeheartedly. You have to shape it for your school. So when we were looking today at the Maths Learning Centre order sequence of lessons, it didn't fit in exactly the same way as this. So we've tweaked it so that it kind of fits a little bit better. But again, you must tweak it for your children and for your school. Over to you, Jenny.
Excellent, thank you, Miriam. Well, as I say, I was absolutely bowled over really when I first met the Rekenrek. I was at a maths conference, and Elizabeth Lambert from the NCTM had one, and she showed me it at the table, and I was like, wow, this is an amazing tool. And I think one of the key reasons it's such an important tool comes down to this bit of evidence and research here about conceptual sabotaging. We know that perceptual sabotaging is that first sort of thing that children do, recognising a small number of objects, saying, oh, that's 3 or that's 5, perhaps like dice patterns, that sort of thing. But conceptual sabotaging is when children start to see numbers within numbers. And as Resnick says here, it's probably the most major conceptual achievement in early school years. So let's have a look at how the Rekenrek can help us with this conceptual sabotaging, which I know again in my own school, having had 2 lockdowns, I think some of our year 3 pupils might have missed out on some of those experiences, which is why again we were so interested this year to look at the Rekenrek for not just year 3 but for year 2, year 1 and for reception. And in fact, as both Emma and Miriam have been showing, there's obviously a Rekenrek up to 100. Some of our children in years 4, 5 and 6 have worked again with one-to-one support, again to help them develop their number sense through the use of this really visual, really tactile tool. Next slide please, Emma. So I was also sort of directed towards this fantastic book from the Maths Centre, as Miriam's mentioned. And so we wrote to them and said that we love your material, and thank you so much again to Jeff Frickham, who's done this fantastic job putting this teaching sequence together. Because it was fabulous having Amy Howe a few weeks ago talking about again how she's very evangelical about the Rekenrek, but we thought, what do people actually need in school is this really well thought through, progressive, teaching sequence that you can just pick up and help your support staff and your teachers to actually follow day to day if you want to launch this new tool in your school. So really, as I say, really clearly set out and just a fabulous resource, and it's all free for you to download. So what we have done is kind of taken the essence of this document and turned it into a sequence of slides for tonight's presentation to give you a flavour of what is in the book. Now, we haven't even got the whole book tonight, that would take us far too long. We're going to go up to almost up, I think up to about lesson 12 or 13, but you're going to again have a chance to look afterwards at how it goes into subtraction, of course, and word problems. And there's even more material now on the Maths Centre Learning website where you can get even more resources to support you with this. So that's, I think, really a great resource to take away. So lesson 1, with any new resource, whether that's quiz and air rods, whether that's again Numicon, whatever it is, you're always encouraged to allow children that time to familiarise themselves with a new bit of kit, aren't you? To get them to talk to you about it, what do they notice about it, what do they see? So again, if you're looking at a Rekenrek, and I hope mine's oriented the right way around on the screen, the children, when I first showed it to them in year 1 and year 2, started talking to me about, oh, I can see, there's 10 red beads and 10 white beads. Or I can see there's 10 on each row, so there's 20 in total. So we started to have lots of chats all about it. And one of the very first things, as I say, that we taught them was what Miriam said. It's about white on the right as the starting position, the ready position. And each time you've done some work on the Rekenrek, when you've been doing some work, it goes back to ready position afterwards. And as Miriam said already, it's you try and encourage the children one push per row. So as I say, whenever you're making a number, you're hopefully visualising it first. Now I think it's really important to say about all kinds of concrete manipulatives and active manipulatives, we want children to internalise those images and eventually be able to work perhaps in a pictorial, or an iconic before they go to the abstract or the symbolic representation. So it's really important we're thinking about that from the get-go, about children really starting to think and say internalise and imagine what it is they're seeing on the Rekenrek, because it isn't about them learning to use this and having it forever. It's about them learning to use this to help them get that deep number sense and that deep understanding of conceptual sabotizing. It's going to help them with all different calculation strategies they're going to go on to and learn. So here you go then. The idea is to start off saying to the children, now I want you to discuss the rows and the beads, and now putting it in start position without touching, just look at it and count on the top row the first 3 beads in your mind. So look and see if you can identify whether the 3 beads would be to push 3 beads across, and on the count of 3, with 1 push, can you slide them across? So looking first, thinking about where you're going to put your finger, and have a go on your Rekenrek if you've got yours ready, and then go, okay, pushing over 3 in 1 push, okay? And then back to ready position after you've done that, and sequences, looking at it, pushing across 3, then across 1, then across 2, then across 10, and the idea is you're just encouraging the children to do that in 1 push. So that orientation lesson, really just getting familiar with this new bit of kit. And I suppose again, one of the key phrases I've learned other teachers say is it's not a tool, it's a tool rather, not a toy. So the children can get that out of the system the first lesson. It's going to be used as a very important tool to help them with their learning and our maths. Next slide please, thank you. So then after they've had the orientation lesson, day 2, this might be quite short lessons. I kind of envisage them as being maybe like 10-minute sort of inputs, you know, again, so quite short, sharp inputs that you can do on a sort of daily basis, building up the skill set, part of that sort of daily fluency work. And this one's lesson 2, about to show me in 1 push on 1 row. So you start off on 1 row, and it says, another way that that Jeff suggests which order to do it in, which I think has been really cleverly constructed, and it made us all think, this is such good variation, isn't it, ladies? I just think it's just so brilliantly constructed. So starting off by pushing 5 across, and then asking you just to push 1 across, and have a go, pushing 3 across, 2 across, 4 across, and each time you're doing that, you're not just doing that, you're saying to the children, how do you know you've pushed across 5? How do you know that that again there's 5 on that on the right side now, on the left, I can't put this on the way around. How do you know that? And again, the children know, because I know 5 and 5 is 10, that sort of thing. Now, I really think this is clever as well than the next lot of the sequence. Once you've got some experience with the top row, you go to the bottom row and notice that sequence of numbers, 11, 15, 19, 16, 12. Why do you think that order of numbers has been chosen? Please feel free to put that in the chat now. We'd love to hear from you. I thought it was a really clever sequence. Why do you think they've done that? Yeah, brilliant. So already we're having Paula say it's 1 more than 10. So again, helping the children to have success. So everyone, when you're starting to push over in 11, you're allowed to obviously 2 pushes, it's 2 rows. If I'm showing you 11, I'm pushing over 10, pushing over 1. And again, the children saying perhaps, how do I know I've got 11? Again, this is where that conceptual sabotaging comes in. Oh, I can see I've got 10 and 1 more. Or maybe they're seeing that as 5 and 5 and 1. Or I can see 9 are left. 9 and 11 make 20. You're starting to see all those lovely combinations there coming through. So yeah, lots of 1 more, less than a multiple of 5. Thank you very much, Richard. So again, really using 5 as your anchor point and the 10s as your anchor points to really help the children see that partitioning and to see, again, hopefully everyone building that success. Then I love that fact you have from 16, 1 more than a multiple of 5, and now we're going to go to 12. And of course, then that idea of, you know, you extend that sequence on. So really great, again, building up confidence, building up success with the tool, and children getting very familiar with it at the same time. Next slide, please. That's lesson 2. Lesson 3. Now, lesson 3 is all about making 5. And again, we had a chat about this the other day. And there's a couple of lessons like this where, again, the anchor number is really important. But notice what, again, has been done here to construct this session. So they're asking you, first of all, to do it forwards. Show me 3 on the Rekenrek. But you want to make 5. Oh, I want 5. So how many more do I need to make 5? So the children are going to push 2 more across. So they say in a sentence, 3 and 2 more are 5. And again, using our wonderful, again, mastery language, or get everyone speaking together, which supports our EAL children, supports our SEND children, supports all of our struggling learners, supports everyone in the classroom to have the words to verbalise for reasoning and thinking. I say, you say, we all say, and in that way, again, it's really, again, going in as a structure as well as a language. So after you've done some work on making 5 going up to 5, we really like the fact that then you're asked to show 8. So everyone's got to show 8. Again, that conceptual subitizing, thinking, oh, I think that's going to be 5 and 3 makes 8 there. And then the idea now is, I didn't really want 8, I only wanted 5. What do I have to do to get back to 5? So thinking about, oh, let's take my 3 white ones back away again. So now I can see that taking 3 away from 8 makes 5. So straight away, you're going beyond to go back and going up to first. So I thought this was really lovely. Thank you. Next slide. So quick brain break. We thought we'd just ask you guys a question. And the question is, how well do you all know your alphabet? I'm hoping you're all going to say brilliant. Absolutely no problem at all. So the next question is, can you say it backwards? Have a little go. Already it's moving forwards only. So we're hoping this is putting you in a child's shoes with number. Try and transpose this idea of counting the alphabet backwards, and imagine you're trying to count backwards if you're 4, 5 or 6 years old. And I think Claire Christie made the point, we do loads of forward counting, but how much time do we spend proportionally going backwards, and should we make sure there's a good balance there, because of course it's so supportive. So I hope you've had a go at that now, trying to do an alphabet backwards. I know I can't do mine, and the answer is, next line, thank you Miriam, Emma, thank you, got the button there. Yes, so how well do you really know it? So I hope you can see the idea of how helpful it would be for children to have that experience forward and back. Lesson 4 is about show me the numbers 5 to 10. So the idea is that you model it first. You go, I'm going to show you 5 in one push, and ask again how they know. And children, again, the lovely thing about it is it's very open, the questioning, isn't it? You might say, well, I can see on the top row there's 5 and 5 makes 10, or I know that 5 is half of 10, or some of the children might say to you, well, I know there's 20 altogether and there's 15 still, and 5 and 15 makes 20, or 5 and 5 and 5 and 5 makes 20, or 4 5s. So you have all different answers you might get out there, showing their reasoning and their thinking and their understanding about this. And then you might show them 6 in one push and ask them how they know. And again, they might tell you, oh, 5 and 1, 6 and 4 makes 10, 14 and 6 makes 20. All different, again, answers might come out there to explaining how they know. And then what they have to do is show you the numbers that are listed there in red in one push on the top row first. So again, they're going to show you, again, notice that whole 10 first, then one less than a multiple of 10. And then we go to 5, anchoring on the 5. Oh, and then we go for 2 more than a multiple of 5, 7. A bit more tricky this time. And then 6, 9, 10, 7, all in one push. But then, this is again where the magic of the Rekenrek comes in. We want to see the same numbers, but this time on 2 rows. So if you're going to show 10 this time, again, you could show, of course, 10 that way. So I could have shown it like this originally on the top row, and now I can show it again this way. You can talk about those configurations of red and white beads. If I'm showing 9 on both rows, I might decide to do 4 there, and so 5 there and 4 there, like that. And you might again ask, well, how many red beads are still left? You know, how many white beads? All those sorts of things. Again, helping to understand the bonds between 10 again. It's all good reinforcement work going on there. And again, ask follow-on questions. Well, how many more would make 10 each time? So they can see that really easily and clearly. So again, it's another really good, consolidation task, orientation task, building up the skills. Now, the classic thing about this is it seems at the moment perhaps quite easy, but like anything in mastery, I love the way it starts to ramp up and starts to make you think. So just watch how the sequence will then continue. What's the next lesson, please? Aha. Now here we're making 10 using 2 rows. So again, this is lesson 5. And again, you need to make 10 on the left. And it says I have 5 beads already. So can you now make it up to the 10? So again, You can have either colour, red or white will work. So children again can solve the puzzle, the problem here by going 5 more white ones or 5 more red ones on both rows. So again, open up that variation of response. Next slide, please. And on this slide here, again, it shows you the idea of seeing that 9 and 1, 8 and 2, 7 and 3. But now, just like before, when we had the anchoring 5, we went up to 5 and then we went beyond 5 to get back to 5, if you remember. Here, the same thing's built into this lesson. We've been working with numbers less than 10 and making them up to 10. And suddenly, here I'm being asked to show me 13. I'm going to show 13 and go, uh-oh, I didn't want 13. Can you get it back to 10 for me? So again, 13 subtract 3 makes 10. So that idea again of being able to show, again, both forwards and backwards, adding and subtracting that one relationship rather than 2 operations. Thank you.
Okay, so on to lesson 6. And I think this is a real moment for children to use all of that pre-learning that they've been doing with the lessons, familiarising themselves with the Rekenrek and that composition of numbers. So this is a flash attack, and I think we often use this in our sessions, maybe using other representations, or sometimes very popular, the dots on the screen, and potentially the configuration of the dots help with that conceptual subitizing, where we're starting to see numbers within numbers. So in this one, what's so fantastic about the resource is what is blue there and italic is actually given to you in that suggested lesson sequence. So obviously you don't have to read it like a script, but I'm going to show you some beads on my Rekenrek, and you will have to tell me how many you see. The more we do, the faster I'm going to flash them. So just quickly give you an example here, so you can see a flash attack here. It's an example from in the book where I would show a slide and hope that the children really quickly could see on the top one there those 4 red beads, and then on the bottom one you can see there's 17 there. So you can see a difference in maybe how long you might leave them up for the children and how they might explain them. But talking about that explanation, we're always trying to develop mathematical language, and any of you that have had any use of the PD spines on the NCETM website will see that language is littered throughout, and we have those stem sentences and those generalizations coming through. So this is a perfect opportunity to provide children with stem sentences as a scaffold to ensure they're explaining the numbers and reasoning in the way that potentially you want them to, and not in this very inflexible way that potentially they will. On the bottom, you can see that suggested order again. Again, you can see the power in that order. 10, very simple, using the colours. 15, then we're 1 less than, 1 more than. And you can just really see, actually, at first glance, that's why we were so grateful to have the opportunity to unpick these. You might think, oh, I'll go my own way. But when you actually have the chance to look at the suggested sequence, you realise just how clever that variation is there. So, perfect opportunity to use some stem sentences today. So some examples here. If I was to show you on my Rekenrek here, 1 push, 9, I might ask you to describe it in different ways. So I know it is 9 because it is 1 less than 10, for instance, I could use. I could use, I know it is 9 because it is 5 and 4 more. Or I know 9 is the whole, 5 is a part, and 4 is a part there, okay? So we're going to have a quick go at our flash attack here, and we'll get a little bit quicker. And I think Jenny and Miriam, you're going to man the chat for us and see how people describe the number that they've seen. So here we go. So how many and how do you know? In the chat for us, please.
4, it was 2 lots of 2.
Fabulous.
16, 4 less than 20.
Lovely.
2 groups of 2.
Great, thank you. Let's try another one. And let's try using that full sentence that we would ask from the children to reason. So I know it is because, okay, here we go. Oh, click. Okay, how many and how do you know? In the chat, please. So I know it is 9 because it is 1 less than 10. Thank you, Rebecca. 9 because I can see 5 and 4. I know it is 9 because it is 1 less than 10. Automatically, we're ensuring children are talking in those full sentences. Okay, let's try another one. Whoa. So getting bigger. Let's see what people are going to say. I need to remind myself what number that was. Concentrate on the chat. Thank you. I know that there were 14 because there was 1 less than 15. Fantastic. I know it was 14 because I can see 10 and 4. Brilliant. I know it is 14 because it, oh, hang on. I know it's 14 because it was 1 less than 3 lots of 5. Some really fantastic reasoning going on as to how you're describing those numbers. 14.
I love the way there's so many different ways of seeing it, and with the STEM sentences as well to support the language. You know, it gives other children other ideas of how you might unpick that number.
Definitely. And I think when you're writing it in the board, in the symbolic, you can have some real depth in the way that those, what you can see as a calculation is represented, actually. Okay, let's have a look. Try one more. I didn't give you long.
So fast.
I think that's the only one I saw.
See it. Let's have a look. I know
it's 8 because I can see double 4. Fantastic.
4 and 4, double 4 is 8.
No, it's 8 because there were 2 groups of 4. Yeah, lovely language there.
Lovely.
2 lots of 4. Excellent.
Maybe that was a bit harsh.
Good question here. I mean, the advice is, isn't it? It's a bit like using a fast eyes, which we use for tens frames, and quite obviously I know you use tens frames pictures which you flash up, and again they require the children to again to see the number and to often again to conceptually subitize the number and see numbers within numbers to justify their reasoning. I suppose again this is like a lesson now where they're getting quite familiar with the Rekenrek. It's a good opportunity again to sort of test the mettle, and you can obviously judge it on your class, can't you? How fast you would issue.
That's what I was going. Yeah, I was going to say, you'd see how your class are doing with it, wouldn't you? And sometimes show them for a bit longer, depending on the number, sometimes a bit shorter. We flashcard tens frames every day, and certainly we change it based on the group. So
it's kind of right for a challenge, isn't it? It's kind of like, you know, we're going to do it fast eyes for this flash for 1 minute, see how many cards we can get through and how many you can get right in that time, you know, once the children are familiar with it.
Okay, and so I think you can see how that enables children to put into play some of that familiarization, and of course we would make sure they were really clear on constructing numbers and deconstructing numbers before we start flashing them. So on to doubles. So this is down as less than 9. So we just skipped ahead, and that was partly because we thought it would be really useful in our order, in our schools, to use doubles in some of the later lessons. So again, this is where it's so crucial to have decided on that order so you can make this, this sequence of lessons fit what you would like to do. So looking at demonstrating all of the doubles up to 5 initially, and then if comfortable to 10, they work on the 2 rows and encourage children to look for different patterns. So not just looking at the 2 rows, also looking vertically there, and enabling children to start to make those other generalizations that sometimes can be lost in amongst some of the other teaching. So the fact that the sum of 2 odd numbers will be even and the sum of 2 even numbers will be even, starting to draw out some of those generalizations with children as they come through. Again, looking for depth in everything that they are doing as they move through. And again, we can have a go. Looking at 7 and 7, I think is a great one. Let me see if I can do it at the same time. 7 and 7 in 2 pushes. because quite often what's so beautiful about the Rekenrek is there, as it says, that 5 and 5 and 2 and 2. So that ability to even flexibly partition within the doubles that you're looking at, the Rekenrek really supports visualization of that. And we know it's so well set up for visualization, even right back at that first lesson that Jenny mentioned, where we're getting them to think before they push. That's that real opportunity for them to think about those benchmarks, that 5 and a bit structure there. So making sure they're really familiar with doubles so they can use it later on with their reasoning about how they see numbers and later calculate. So that's lesson 9. Looking at lesson 10 then, looking at that almost a double. And I just think the way that this flexibly can be moved, so if we look at 5 and look at it being almost a double here, oh sorry, so that double 2 and 1 more, and enabling children to really see and starting to have those conversations about that odd number here and how we can deconstruct it further to have a clearer understanding of how we can use doubles and near doubles there moving forwards. Okay, let's have a look. And you can see here that depth in the way that's recorded later on. So depending on which group of children you're working with, showing them that recording is quite powerful, I think, moving forwards there. Okay, so that is lesson 10, almost a double. And look here, again, find the doubles within those numbers. So encouraging children to have the whole number to start with and find the double there. So looking at the number 7 and finding that double, and they'll become really, really fluent in the fact that this 1 here, taking it off and looking for that double, is really clear to them. Okay, so lots of examples as you go through. So I love these, that idea of that sort of, it's true or false, 6 add 7, is it equal to 12 add 1, and asking children to use their Rekenrek to prove whether that works. We're constantly, I love it because they're constantly putting that 1 on and removing it again. And it's again back to earlier on when we were talking about that fluidity of moving forwards, but also moving backwards. So I love the design here and how that forces it for children's exploration. So is it true or false you might use, or can you prove it? Okay, and then you can see why for our order we teach doubles before this combinations, because we wanted children to be able to describe numbers to 10 or further using that knowledge of doubles or almost doubles. So hence that feeling free enough not to follow this bespoke package, and feel free to put your own stamp on it. So therefore this is really, this section here is all about children becoming more confident when they haven't got both add-ends. So we know, looking further down there, 7 add 8 is equal to what, is how children are most familiar with seeing those addition sentences. So this builds up to children being able to see them where the missing add-end is within the calculation. So should we try this one, just because I think it's quite nice to do. So let's make 7. I'll start with 4. 4 on your Rekenrek is what you would ask the children. Now on the bottom row, how many more to make 7? So you can see that it's in words, but we have that missing number problem. Okay, and then also how children are reasoning about how they're making it. So the one on the bottom, I know that 2 groups of 4 beads is 8, so they made the 8 first, so I only need to slide over 1 bead here. So what's really great about that is some children may just start by moving upwards, that 3, but others may use that previous lesson of almost doubles and go from 8 and move that 1 back. So I love that because children are doing those missing number problems before they even need to see them. And here we go, a suggested sequence again. Let's make 8. Let's try it. Let's make 8. I'll start with 5. How many more? And you can see the children are going to move across the 3 there. And then if we look at that sequence, let's make 9. I'll start with 6. And again, the children are going to move 3 o'clock across. And I love it because that's when you start to get those light bulb moments, isn't it? When the children are like, oh, it's still 3. So you can start to have the conversation about what's different about the addends and what's the same. And that power of how we move through will support their reasoning as they go through. So lesson 7 there. And then lesson 8, again, we've got that missing number problem, but working on over to 20. So again, we did talk about when we were looking at this, if ever you decided to do more than lesson 7 on that concept, that would be absolutely fine. Make sure all the children are really secure in what they're doing and moving forward. So again, missing addends, but working towards 20 in the lesson 8. And again,
Emma, I think it's got a lot harder, hasn't it, suddenly? We're lesson 8, so in theory it could be day 8 of this sequence, so week 2, and already we're getting quite sophisticated here, so it's ramped up quite quickly. So I think one of the things we did talk about is how you might take longer on some of the lessons. You might repeat some of the lessons for a few days even before you move on, depending on the age and, again, the confidence of the children you're working with. But I think, yes, it's getting quite, making me have to think, but it's making hopefully everyone else at home think too.
I definitely think at this point, I think after Flash Attack, you start to really feel it push up with each lesson, and having that confidence to spend longer is absolutely crucial at this point.
If we slow down, because we're trying to move away from counting strategies. So if we're starting with a number and making a larger number, there is going to be the potential to just count on in ones on the next one. We want to, so the exploration and discussion within the classroom, because obviously that will come up as a way of doing it, but somebody else will probably say, well, I did this because, or I did this because, and then all children are then becoming more fluent just from hearing each other.
Yes. And I think that comes down to that process and not product all the time. So watching what the children are doing with their Rekenrek, not just checking, have they got that final answer? I think that's very telling, because you do see them start to move one at a time, and we're trying to push them into that calculation there. So yeah, definitely a big ramp up there. I think it's Jenny.
Okay, so this one now, we're going to some more part whole work. So really, again, supports the work you might be doing with part whole models, again with your TENS frames, other resources you've got in your classroom, bar modelling, whatever it is you're using. Another perfect, again, conceptual variation to use. So I just printed some flashcards. Again, there are flashcards I found, again, free on the internet for Rekenrek, which are really handy. We were using earlier on in the session. And then the idea with this is I've just used one of my flashcards as my cover up for my beads. So the idea is here I'm showing you this, pushing that across and saying to the children and saying to you guys, well, if you can see this number of beads on the top, right, how many can you see? Hopefully you're all going to tell me you can see 6. How many beads must be hidden underneath the cover? How many am I covering up, and how can you know for sure? And then again, Jeff and Freakham put this suggested, listening out, as Emma said, they're listening out what the children are doing and what the children are saying. Assessment for learning on this is absolutely crucial. We're whizzing through this tonight, but in the lesson you begin really listening to the children and getting to repeat each other's answers possibly, and again to build each other's answers, so we really build up this whole big picture of understanding of number sense. So again,
we also talked, didn't we, Jenny, about it being in a context of making that, right, we could cover it, but you could make it into a tent. So you could talk about children going camping, how many are in the tent, how many aren't in the tent, and you could link it even to the book Maisie Goes Camping. There's so much scope for using it as a kind of pure mathematical tool, or contextualizing it to a problem that they might be familiar with.
And so some of the children might be focused on just the top row there and thinking about, well, 5 and 1 more makes 6, and I counted up to 10, 7, 8, 9, 10, so 4 must be covered. Another child might be using their bonds to 10. I see 6, I know there's 4 more. I see there's 5 red and 5 white on each row. If there's only 1 white, there must be 4 more whites covered on the top row. So again, really pushing again this understanding, this conceptual knowledge they've got now of the Rekenrek, and how it's again reinforcing their knowledge of number bonds and again the structure of number there. Thank you, Emma. Next slide. So as ever, he gives a suggested sequence and talks about again sticking there with just the problems between 1 and 10. So building confidence all the time. It's about again having expectation that everyone's going to get this, everyone's going to succeed. But again, depending on your children, some will give you a greater depth answer perhaps in their reasoning, and others again will be seeing again more simple ways of explaining what they're seeing. But you've got sequence there again of 6, 5, 7, 4, you can see that on there. And then when they're comfortable with those whole problems between 1 and 10, start extending it using both rows and talking about it being 20. But I like the way again he's really pointing out here, make sure if you change the game as it were, you stress the whole has now changed. So I'm talking about a whole of being just a 10, but now I'm talking about the whole of being 20, which again is a really good mathematical thing to remember when we're talking about fractions and things. Defining your whole is an absolute key thing to always as a teacher remember, to want to again avoid children again getting confused and having misconceptions. So that's great, thank you very much. And again, lesson 11 there, this is again a bit more variation here, showing multiple ways to show the same numbers. So here you've got again 12 shown as the 10 and 2, thinking about the remaining beads there, and also showing the 12 again as double 6 there. So again, really pushing children's conceptual understanding. Again, I think again it's really just shows how much potential this has got to really push it a bit deeper. Thank you. Lesson 12, that's about again using flashcards again, slightly different flashcards this time. As you can see, you've got numbers 4 and 3 on the front there, and on the back you've got the calculation, and the idea is again you have a set of flashcards there, building up again that confidence with the children each time. Thank you. And again, more there on It's Automatic, again starting to see that recall. And lesson 12, this could be, if you follow the sequence really tightly, it could be like just after into week 3, couldn't it? Really early on, day 12, which is why, as Emma said in Movers, you might want to spend a little bit longer making sure children are really secure. I have to say, I've delivered this training session to every TA in my school and lots of my teachers, and I think what's been really good about this is they felt really confident to go away and try this out. And although I really recommend going back to the source material, really recommend going back to the full book on this, for busy teachers and busy TAs, being able to kind of distill it into like this bite-sized kind of gist of the lesson is really helpful when you're going to get kind of cracking with the children. Just to remember, that's the number of today's session, that's what I'm focused on, here's the sequence I'm going to use today, and perhaps then take some sort of notes and assessment notes on the children and their responses. So I think it's really hopefully very empowering for staff to feel they can have a go at this. And again, they talk about here again ways the children might see it, anchoring on the 5, anchoring on the 10, and again how you can again work with that. So again, lots of really helpful notes.
And I was just going to say, because we often get questions about a greater depth of understanding as well. Throughout the source materials, there are like things for more advanced when children are rushing through it quite quickly. It's got a bit about background and those prerequisites that are really necessary to move on. So it's a really comfortable material, isn't it, to teach from? And similarly to you, felt really confident delivering those sessions, but thinking about them as concepts rather than individual lessons, maybe.
So I think the next slide here is that fantastic book. And I think it's interesting as well, when I've trained staff at school. It's taken me, like tonight, about an hour to do this. I think we did it 45 minutes we've got it down to in some sessions we've delivered. But we've stopped short of getting into subtraction and word problems yet, because we didn't want to give anybody cognitive overload. Again, like a good mastery lesson, don't give them too much, they actually lose the beginning bit that you just try to teach them. Just try to, again, prevent cognitive overload happening and make it one step at a time. Small steps are easier to take. So the idea is that once everyone's really happy and confident delivering all of this part of the programme, then we're going to come back together as a team and then look at the next stage of this sort of rollout and this progression with the content. Because as I say, this book goes on into subtraction and word problems, but we weren't ready for that on day one. We wanted to get this under our belt first and then think about the next phase of our whole school development with this. Thank you. Miriam.
There's just some key reflections to sort of sum up what we've been talking about today and before today about fluency. So if it's not taught, they will not learn it. And I mentioned this before, but there is very little improvement, according to the research, in the recall of additive facts between years 2 and 6. Outcomes are strongest when there's a combination of recall and strategies. And the route to memorization is recognizing relationships and making connections. And that's where the Rekenrek comes in very strongly. Children will be influenced by their teachers' modeling. So it's really important when we're using our Rekenrek that we model a range of strategies and we celebrate that. And perhaps we also highlight what we think is the most efficient of them as well, and why we have that wonderment going on. And there is a need to move away as quickly as we can from counting strategies. So it might be that when you are working, you're counting on, that very quickly, if you did that over a few sessions, that you might start with a handful of children doing that. But as the sessions progress, you have all of your class moving from counting strategies to calculating. And that the ability to partition single-digit numbers in a variety of ways is crucial. And that is what this is all about, and not just single-digit numbers. Thank you. So what we would like you to do before the next session is to reflect on fluency at your school. Think about the representations you use, the structures you use. We also would like you to consider the role of a daily maths fluency session with Rekenreks, and might you add that to your practice? How could you adapt the ideas to other representations? Because ideally the Rekenrek is used alongside our other representations, whether it's number lines or tens frames, so that children are getting that depth through a variety of representations. And also to start to think, if you haven't already, about a systematic approach to getting each objective taught, learned, practiced and assessed. Thank you.
That's great.
And if you have any further questions in the chat, that would be great. We did have a question about language, yeah. So
I think that's really key. Different schools choose different year groups to introduce language. Some schools are happy using sort of part whole for longer, or so I think as long as your school is really clear on when language is introduced and everyone understands how new language is introduced and linked to previously learnt language, that is the most important thing. Some schools decide to teach it right from the off, language like add-end sum, minuend, subtrahend difference and things like that. Other schools prefer to introduce it later on, relying on part whole, maybe for a bit longer. I think the most important thing is that there is a shared language across your school and a progression in language that everybody is familiar with to enable children to communicate their mathematical thinking confidently, and to reason mathematically and problem solve. So yeah, I mean, at our school we do it quite early, but it's down to individual schools to make that decision. So is there a recommended Rekenrek as a question?
Can I respond to that one?
Yeah.
So obviously we can't recommend a particular brand, but there are some considerations. There's lots on the market. So one thing to consider is that you can get them made out of plastic or wood. So you have to make a decision as a school which route you want to go down. You might be an environmental factor you want to consider. But one of the things that happened to me was when I ordered one that was cheaper than the rest, it arrived, but my beads were not set out like this. They were red, white, white, red. And at first glance, I didn't notice it. But when I did notice it, I realised that actually it detracted from what I was trying to show. Like I only bought the one. So do watch out for that, because they're not all the same. And what you want is the reds lined up and the whites lined up. When you get the larger Rekenreks, to 50, they're one way, and the second 50, they are reversed, but there's a reason for that. So that's just something to watch out for when sort of buying them.